Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're going to wait a couple minutes just for more people to sign on. But just to give you a little bit of a rundown of how today is going to go, this is now the 7th happy hour that we've had since the COVID crisis began, which is kind of hard to believe, actually. And tonight we're switching the format up a little bit. Instead of having one dedicated speaker or even one topic, we've invited a bunch of folks who regularly contribute to Ciocca Center gatherings to come and give 10-minute chunks of what they're seeing, what they're hearing, and what advice they're giving to their clients in this time. So it's a little bit more of a round robin. So in about 2 more minutes, we'll wait for a couple of people to sign on. We'll get going. But in the meantime, my name is Brian Becker. For those I don't know, I am the Director of Small Business Outreach at the Ciocca Center for Principled Entrepreneurship at the Bush School of Business at the Catholic University of America, which is officially the longest title I've seen. At the end of the day, basically what my job entails is interacting with local business owners and providing as many resources as we can to help them thrive. And in turn, we were able to get our students excellent boots on the ground experience with local business owners. So that's the gig. To give you just a basic overview of how we normally operate when we're not in lockdown. We do have the Intercity Capital Connections program every fall, which is a 1-day crash course of business basics, as well as now what will hopefully become an annual event, the Capital Access Expo in the spring, where we bring a variety of capital providers together to help bridge the gap between those who might be funded and those who can do the funding. So those are one of our many interests, but as far as the student projects go, they can run the gamut from marketing and design plans to market research to strategy and operations analyses, SWOT analyses, Core and Explorer, et cetera. So a couple of my colleagues who are on the call here, Rachel Garfield, who is our entrepreneur in residence, entrepreneurship fellow and proud product of the Ciocca Center. She helps keep everything running on time, and all the newsletters that you get is a lot of the things that she works on, at least for my programming. Michael Hernandez, who helps co-teach the courses with me, as well as he is the on-the-ground specialist for any of the businesses. So since I lack a basic business background and I'm more of a coalition builder, Michael is the one who goes in and in many cases will help businesses directly. So if you've engaged with the Ciocca Center, you've probably met him at this point. And our first speaker today, just to give you a little bit of a preview, is going to be Eddie Subin, who has a long banking history and has recently just joined let me get this right, FC Financial, I believe. FSC first, and he's the Chief Lending Officer. Eddie has seen all kinds of different trends in over 30+ years of banking, and he was one of the first calls that I made as soon as things like the PPP program were starting to be discussed, much less passed and then implemented. So Eddie's going to give us his read on what he's hearing in the funding space. After that, we're going to have Chad Shusky and Prayas Newpain from the Washington, D.C. Economic Partnership talking about public-private partnerships and what the city is up to in response to the crisis. At 5:30, we'll have Enid Doggett from Inspired Media. She is going to talk about PR tips. And since a lot of attention is on small business owners and telling their story right now, she has a couple of very practical tips on how you might navigate that space if that's not your regular experience. After that, we'll have Sarah Gibson from 20 Degrees, which is an impact investing firm, but also does a lot of small business consulting, what she's hearing from her clients and how she's advising them in this crisis. Followed by Kyle Todd of Rhode Island Avenue Main Street and Rhode Island Avenue Radio, and he'll again give his perspective. And then at 6 o'clock, we'll have John Maines, my good friend from SB Works, who really has taught me a ton about what it means to provide value for local business owners. And in addition to Eddie and some others, he's somebody with whom I'm in constant contact as we all try to navigate this thing together. Just a couple of I think, best processes as we navigate here. If you have a question for any of the speakers, go ahead and throw it in the chat. That's a whole lot easier than trying to raise hands or anything like that. So please do that. Also, if you're not speaking, please go ahead and mute your microphone until you are. That helps with some of the feedback, particularly if anybody's taking advantage of the nice day outside. Helps with some of the lawnmower noises and those kinds of things. And then if you haven't yet joined our newsletter, if you were referred to this gathering, we will put a link up at the end where you can do that. And basically what we've done is, in addition to inviting you to things like this and future programming, we've also kept track of the top 5 or 6 articles we're reading on a weekly basis, and what has helped shape our thinking as we provide advice to others, in addition to keeping you well looped in on the various programs we have coming down the pike, ICCC, as I mentioned, or any of our usual monthly gatherings, which have been weekly gatherings in most recent memory. So we hope to engage with all of you. The last kind of pitch that I'll give before we let Eddie get us kicked off is that we are still offering one-on-one consultations for business owners. And we do encourage people who have taken advantage of that even 6 weeks ago to check back in if they want, because as we all know, the landscape has shifted since then, and it's still a very dynamic process. So I see Rachel has put up the newsletter link, and within that, this Friday, you'll get this week's dispatch, which includes links to any of the things we've talked about. And we will also follow up with slide decks and things like that from tonight's presentation. So this is, as with a lot of things we're doing, this is something new for us. Typically we have one dedicated speaker, but I figured since we have all these great folks that I'm regularly talking with, instead of getting secondhand knowledge from me, let's let them speak for themselves in their areas of expertise. So without further ado, Mr. Eddie Toobin, take it away, Eddie.
Thanks, Brian. How are you? Good to see you. Good to see you, Rachel. It's been a long time since we had our conference, and what a difference from having, what did we have, Rach? 1,000 people there, oversubscribed?
Close. I think we had about 800.
Unbelievable. And here we are today. So I'm Eddie Toobin. I'm the Chief Lending Officer, as Brian said, for FSC First, which is a Certified Development Corporation. Suddenly in great demand because we're experts in SBA lending, which big business really didn't hear of too much until the PPP program. And I'm going to talk today about the life of a commercial chief lending officer in the midst of a pandemic and economic turbulence. So my office is a government building, and since I took my job, I haven't even seen my office. It's been closed by the government, and we work all remotely. And we are responsible for the administration and management of a $15 million emergency loan fund for Prince George's County to help small businesses survive. And I believe the strategy now is very similar to the strategy in the Great Recession, which was we saw that by giving emergency loans through the SBA, which at that time were 100% guaranteed loans, and they were up to $35,000. They could be used for legitimate expenses for the business in specific areas. There were no payments for like a year, and then they paid them back within 5 years. The PPP plan, the Paycheck Protection Program, which is on its second round and almost exhausted. And certainly the bankers who have been working on the program are totally exhausted because it's been mired by hiccups the entire way. Are trying to put liquidity in the marketplace. So the issue is, it's a bigger issue. And so that lenders are now being called in by the Treasury Department because what they recognize is 54% of small businesses as of 2 weeks ago, according to the Chamber of Commerce, had closed. And if we don't have spending and we don't have liquidity, everything becomes a domino effect, and we sink into this spiraling black hole, which is the opposite of what economic stimulus is supposed to do, which is to help. Every dollar that's spent is supposed to have in good economic policy, it's supposed to have this impact that's a multiplier effect. And so the multiplier effect would normally say, oh, well, we have spent $1 with the government, we're going to get $50 worth of value in the economy. So far, I don't know that that's happened yet because the sinkhole is still sinking and so many people are out of work and there's this whole different pieces. So what do I do every day? I get up every day and I work out first thing in the morning. I keep a routine. My wife and I have breakfast together, and then I'm off into the office and I'm working on loans, these emergency loans that I've been telling you about. It's heartbreaking. Every case is a case that you want to loan them some money so that they can help maintain their business for a little while longer. And there's not one that wasn't justified in what we did. Having said that, in the PPP program, there were at least 80 that we are suspicious about not being justified. And the Secretary of the Treasury has said to those large businesses that may have received loans that they shouldn't have received, you have until May 7th to send that money back or we're going to investigate you. You've probably all heard that Harvard got money and they've got a massive multi-billion-dollar endowment, so they have credit elsewhere to speak of, cash in the bank. Shake Shack gave their money back already, and there's some other ones. So I'm reviewing those loans on a daily basis, and there's no hope in sight until we have some form of recovery, because the traditional bankers that I work with, I do SBA 504 loans directly from FSC First. Those are loans for owner-occupied real estate. We're in the second lien position. The banks are in the first lien. It's mostly real estate and equipment. The loans are as little as 10% down, but we can't find lenders to do the first trust loans right now. They're so occupied with other things and they're so concerned about risks in their portfolio that that's all they're doing. So that's part of what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis, and I'm certainly concerned about that. On the other side, I'm working down with our Senate and congressional leaderships and saying, hey, listen, I don't really agree with what you did as it relates to the economic stimulus. So I proposed the Tuvin rule. And the Tuvin rule basically says a couple of things. One, that why would you want to send a paper check to people when you want those people to be in their homes? You don't want people going outside, particularly the lowest income people. The people who are all eligible for these economic stimulus checks are the ones that are probably non-banked the most as a percentage of all of us. And so you want to send something in the form of a credit card where you would have some feature that you would be able to control the timing that the card is used. You want to say, you have 30 days to use this, Kyle Todd, or lose it. You're an RIA, come on. Because the reason for this, the reason for the whole economic stimulus is to stimulate the economy. I know it sounds stupid, but 70% of GDP is consumer spending. So we could buy our way out of a depression or even a recession if we can create a multiplier effect, which is what I mentioned to you guys earlier. So it's tough to see the government doing this, especially when we know that some of those people aren't going to spend the money and we need the money right now, and we might need to recover the unused money so that people could, in areas of the country where we needed a second shot in the arm for an economic stimulus, that people could use that. So that's one of the efforts I've been working on up on the Hill. Another effort that I've been working on, very similar to that, is to do with the timing. I wish I could find it right now because I don't see it on my screen, but it has to do with the timing of when these businesses actually get to utilize those funds. And so what we're arguing is that multi-unit restaurants, for example, that have this requirement to be closed by the government shouldn't be forced to use their payroll money within the first 8 weeks from the time they get it, because they may not even be open in 8 weeks. And what would happen is, as you look at the reopening, the ramp up period in the center, I don't know if you can see my mouse at all, but by the time they get to this point, let's say July the 8th in this example, which started on April 15th, by the time they would get to this point, they're out of money. And as you all know from your studies in school, when you're out of money, that's also called bankruptcy. So we'll end up funding all these companies. They spend the money on staff now. They haven't been able to open their doors. They don't have any money left for inventory. They don't have any money left for ramping back up, and we lost them. So I think the government has to make some changes on that in the next version, which we haven't seen any drafts yet. There's been some conversations. We know that Marco Rubio and Ben Cardin, both senators on the Democratic and Republican side of the Senate Committee on Small Business and Entrepreneurship, both approve this, both have talked about it, but we haven't seen any results. Now, as I get out of this sharing mode, are there any questions, Brian, that anybody has for me? Rachel, anybody have any questions they want me to answer, or do we want to go to
I have a question for you, Eddie. I've had a couple emails late last week and into this week For the folks who are relying upon more conventional SBA services that are not PPP related, I think you spoke to the fact that so many of the SBA providers have been completely consumed by this recent output. When do you expect that they're going to be able to focus on things like 504 loans and 7As and the kind of regular portfolio that they usually offer?
So it's an excellent question. I'm predicting that round 2 of the funding for the PPP loan program is going to be exhausted toward the end of this week. And once that happens, they have the ability to move those loans into their closing departments. And it's pretty straightforward loan documents. I think that you could be able to start in 2 weeks from now to speak with loan officers at banks, commercial banks, about business lending.
Okay. That's extremely helpful.
They still have to make money. They're not making a ton of money off these PPP loans. The big question is, how are you going to address the risk? How are you going to prove that your model is financially feasible? And remember, there's a lot of models out there that have, Peloton has gone crazy. Look at the stock valuation. It's an incredible model. One of my friends went to Harvard with John, the founder of Peloton. They're going nuts. Amazon. What would we have done if we didn't have Amazon to get through this scenario, this pandemic right now? They've gone nuts. Netflix, the value of Netflix has gone up, and some of the other online programs. Zoom, the value of Zoom has gone up. So there's always going to be some model that will work regardless. And I think you have to make sure that when you're presenting, that beside knowing, many of you who have heard me before know that I always say, you got to talk the talk. You need to know what your debt service coverage ratio is. You need to know what your debt to equity ratio is when you walk in the door to talk to that lender. Now you need to know what are your options and how are you going to work in the new economy.
And just last question, Eddie, are there any resources to that last point that people can point to educate themselves and to talk the talk now that it's different things that need to be said?
I don't know of resources yet other than I've seen a number of articles in the Financial Times about what will be the reality of business as we go forward. I have seen an article earlier about a new focus on ESG and what that means going forward. I have seen, supply chain and the importance of ensuring that you've got supply chains even in an emergency crisis. But it's really a lot to do with crisis management and how you can make sure that you can still derive revenues from your business to be able to support repaying your debt with a profit, 1.25 debt service coverage ratio to the bank, recognizing what's happened. I don't have a direct resource though, other than those articles. And I'm happy to share with you some of those articles, Brian.
That's great. Thank you so much. So I knew it would go quickly, and it did. And if you could stick around for a little bit, or I can also refer people your way if they have questions afterwards, if you're unable to stay. For the next, awesome. Thank you so much. Next group up, we have Chad Shusky and Prayas Newpan from Washington, D.C. Economic Partnership. And I know that time goes quickly, so I won't steal any of yours. Go, take it away, gentlemen.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having us. See if I can share my screen right quick. Again, thanks for having us. I've been fortunate to participate in a couple of these calls, but never really got a chance to kind of tell everyone kind of what we do and what our focus is. So again, I'll be joined by Prayas Newpan. He's our manager of business retention and expansion. We're going to be kind of tag teaming this, but I'm going to give you kind of an overview of our organization. Then I'm going to turn it over to him to talk about some specific programs that we have. So real quickly about us, we are a nonprofit public-private partnership. We've been around for about 20 years, and our focus is economic development on behalf of the city. So we do not focus on the metropolitan area, but just the district proper. And we do this through various business attraction, retention type activities. We don't control land or any kind of funds, so we're not the ones who are going to be able to write you a check, but we do a lot of connection and facilitating when it comes to economic development. So kind of some basic overview of kind of things of what we do. There we go. So we try to be kind of a one-stop shop for businesses to reach out to. And that's whether you're in the startup phase, meaning you're at the idea stage, all the way up to you've been in business for a couple of years, to Fortune 500 companies we deal with. You might have a question, again, what resources are available out there, what information can help me grow my business, start my business. And again, we kind of want to be your first point of contact to kind of tell you what's happening in the city and point you in the right direction. And I should mention, most of the services, if not all of our services we offer, are free. And so I'm going to go through kind of high level, kind of the major kind of initiatives that we have. So one big initiative we do is kind of data and research. If there's any Star Trek fans that are out there, you know, they always open up with, you know, seek out, you know, new life and new civilizations. So that's what we try to do. We're always trying to seek out new resources that are available for the business community, what new data, what new information, intelligence we can gather, and then we kind of package that all up and then push it back out in more of a kind of easy to read, consumable manner. And so I just put on the screen, you see a couple of our more popular resources. In this case, these are publications, but the reality is it's really the information that's behind it that we focus on. And so some of it's real estate stuff. So where the city is growing, you see all those cranes in the sky, and where are the growth areas of the city. And then our neighborhood profiles looks at specific corridors and commercial areas and gives you kind of the baseline demographic information, who's investing where and when.
If I could give a very quick shout out, our students are mystified by the complete presentation that your resources offer. They're like, well, I don't know much about DC neighborhoods, and I can sometimes throw the book at them physically. But the information's all in there, so thank you for that.
No problem, thank you. And then recently, and again, something we'll hint at, you know, as a lot of businesses are pivoting, obviously given the current environment that we're in, you know, our organization, we're trying to pivot too as well. And so we've been trying to do a little bit more deeper dives. And this is just one example that we have on our website, but really looking at specific industries and kind of taking a little bit deeper dive of those industries, again, to help investors understand what's happening in the city. And when we use the term investors, we're talking about, again, this could be a small business who's investing in the neighborhood all the way up into, again, a larger company as well. And I will say traditionally, we've kind of focused more on the retail food business side, as well as the technology sector. We actually do have someone on staff who focuses just on the tech sector. But I'm going to let Prayas, when his term comes, talk a little bit more about, we again have expanded beyond just those kind of major sectors, but I'll let him get into that a little bit more. We are a public-private partnership. These are our biggest stakeholders. These are our board members. And I say that to say that a lot of times when businesses, you know, are looking for resources, a lot of the times, you know, the first thought is, oh, the government has a program for me, an incentive for me. And while yes, we do that, we also will connect you to the private sector as well. If there's a private sector entity that can help, you know, solve your problem or offer a service that you that you're in need of. And I throw this on here again, just to show kind of a wide example of businesses that we've worked with. This isn't necessarily all the businesses, but just kind of a wide example of this. We cut across industries, again, whether it's retail, tech, service-based, and again, these represent one-person shops all the way up to obviously large companies here. But our real goal, I should say, is again to help businesses grow. And again, obviously with COVID-19, we've had to pivot as well. And so while growth is great, right now it's really about survival. And so we've had to kind of pivot some of our programs and resources to make sure that we're helping businesses kind of and meet them where they are and not where obviously they might have been 2 or 3 months ago. And so again, we can be kind of we're happy to do, I should say, individual consultations, one-on-one sessions. We do put on programs throughout the year that focus on things such as, you know, accessing capital or access to capital, I should say, all the way to how to make your business friendly for those who have disabilities. So we have a wide range of programs we put on, but like I said, we also do kind of the one-on-one. And traditionally we would sit down with you one-on-one, but obviously today it's hard to do. So we do virtual consultations. And our real goal is to be a long-term partner with the business community. And just to kind of give you a quick example before I turn it over to Prayas is through a program that actually Prayas runs, we met with a company that they focus on sustainable buildings, so measuring energy in buildings. So we met with them in the fall, and we initially provided them, here's some resources you should consider. But then about 6 months later, we were on a webinar, and there was a company that actually financed properties that are looking to do, you know, green energy upgrades. So I reached out to the finance company and just asked them a little bit about them. And I learned that about a quarter of their businesses or a quarter of their customers come to them without knowing or having a solution in place. They're just looking for funding. And so I went back to that company that we met back, you know, in the fall, and I connected the two together, and they're now having conversations about potential partnerships. So my real kind of point there is that, you know, we're happy to talk with people.
we're a free service. And then again, our goal is not to, even if we can't help you, it's not a check you off the box. We can't help you, good luck on your way. It's that no, we keep track of all this stuff. Because again, 3 months later, 6 months later, as our network starts to expand, we might find someone or we get in touch with someone and we'll remember that we met with you and then connect you back with them as well, if it makes sense. So again, thank you for having us. I'm going to turn it over to Prayas now, and he's going to talk about some of our business engagement programs.
All right, thank you, Chad. It's great to be here, Brian and Rachel. Thanks for inviting us. We've had a lot of conversations about, how do we support businesses in the city, and part of that for us is all about hearing what businesses really need. So as Chad mentioned, we not only work with small businesses, but also medium-sized and large businesses in the city. And we do that through our program called Employer Engagement, in which we're talking to some of the larger companies that are located in the district. And in doing that, I think part of our, are you able to see my screen?
Try now. Sorry, Prayas.
Can you guys see my screen now?
We can
Not
see
yet,
you
no.
on your screen.
Sorry, I'm trying to get the screen to work.
See a beautiful football field right behind your shoulder.
All right, there we go. How about now? Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yep, you're good.
Awesome. So as I was saying, so our employer engagement program, again, the goal is really, one, to learn more about the companies themselves, two, to share some of the work that we're doing in the district, third, to learn some of the challenges they are facing, and lastly, as Chad mentioned earlier, to help businesses connect with one another to make sure that they're able to get the resources they need. And we're experiencing that, that is more important now than ever, as businesses are pivoting to a different model, to either a virtual model or whatnot. I think it's really important that we're able to connect with businesses. So as of right now, the employee engagement program, we've touched just about 150 companies. And in the next, over the course of the last couple of weeks, we've been going back to them to understand the impact they're having and using the information they're giving us to inform some of the programs that we're going to be running in the future. So just to give you an example of the future, example of the programs that we're going to be running in the future, as Chad mentioned, we do a whole lot of research as an organization, and a part of that is publishing Doing Business Guide, which is a summary of all the information that you need to start or grow your business in the city. So we're in the midst of updating the information, and because of COVID-19, everything has changed rapidly. So one of the things that we're looking at is how do we make sure that the information we're providing through Doing Business Guide is able to help businesses adapt to the current climate. So, if you guys have suggestions on what that could look like, we would love to talk about that, since we are in the process of updating the information.
And Prayas, I know we mentioned this before, but if it's ever helpful to put a link in our newsletter so that you can get more feedback, and if there's a survey or something, that we're more than happy to do that.
Sure, I can do that. And I'll also send you a link, Brian, that links to the current Doing Business Guide, if that would be helpful for anyone else. I know I have I'll take a couple of more minutes just to touch on two more things. One of the things that we're looking to do, we understand that there's a lot of programming out there right now, but one of the things that we are hearing from businesses is how do we adapt our business model so that we can do business virtually? So just with that in mind, we are partnering with the Latino Economic Development Corporation as well as Microsoft to do a virtual e-commerce summit later this month. It's going to be on May 28th. And the goal of that is going to be for anyone who's looking to open a virtual business. We'll have a couple of sessions focused on that. And for the second component of the summit, we'll have sessions that help businesses understand how do you pivot your business online. So, those were a couple of things we have heard quite a bit. We're also working on a retail summit. Again, that's also going to be virtual, which will provide retailers in the city information they need to really adapt their business model as they go through this pandemic together. And lastly, I'm not the right person to talk about this, but I just want to mention, I'm sure, Brian, you're going to bring in partners from your city to talk more about Reopen DC, as well as some of the recovery efforts. But the Mayor Bowser and the administration had put together the website, which provides information on business recovery as well as information on Reopen DC. For people who are interested, Reopen DC Mayor Bowser elected an advisory committee that helps guide the city in terms of reopening the city. One of the things that you can do as a resident or a business is you can go to the website and fill out a survey that can guide how the city should reopen going through this pandemic. And I think that is, that is the best advice that I can give everyone. Please go to the website, fill out the survey, let the mayor as well as the advisory committee know some of the priorities that you have, some of the challenges you are facing, so that as we reopen from this pandemic, we're doing it in a manner that works for everyone. And the website for that is coronavirus.dc.gov. So those are just some of the resources. Again, we're here as a resource for the business community. We put programming together throughout the year. So if you are interested in learning more, feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to have a conversation with you.
Great, thank you so much, Chad. I really appreciate it. I know that the 10 minutes goes really quickly, and you guys covered a lot of ground. So not to cut into any of Enid's time, but next up is Enid Doggett from Inspire Media, talking about PR opportunities and how to address them in these times. Take it away, Enid.
Okay. I am sharing the screen. I am trying to share my PowerPoint and it doesn't seem to be coming up. Well, here we are. Okay. So not to take much of anybody else's time, but I do want to make sure that everyone on this call knows that you all, because of this pandemic, have become storytellers, and that while this presentation focuses primarily on media relations, that you also have an opportunity to engage with groups and others that can help tell your story as well, or help actually amplify your story so it is appealing to the media. I'll skip the part about me except to say, yes, I was involved with Barbie's 40th anniversary, and I have worked with a number of media outlets, and you can read all that about me. You guys know what the situation and some of the barriers you're facing in terms of public relations are. So, I mean, a lot of you may even have PR people, and if you do, please do, this is a great time to engage with them. But for businesses that don't, I suggest that you strongly create a plan of action, and then you make a determination what you want to sell, pitch, or convey, and who is your audience, who are the people that are buying from you, who are the people that you are selling to, who are the people that potentially can spread the word for you. And then you can develop a target list of those particular media outlets that can help you amplify or reach people through your message. One of the things that you can do, and I like to say that, all of us are, incredibly busy. And so, there are a lot of studies about productivity during this particular time. However, I do know that people read the news, but make the news, or that news that you watch, more purposeful for you and your business. You know who your trades are. You know what you already read. You know the people that can reach the people primarily that are your core audience. In this case, I'm going to, step out here on a limb that a lot of us are, your audiences are, NBC4 and WJLA and WAMU, and those are the people that you reach. Reach and produce those folks too. And then the other thing, because that will help you to frame your story or your narrative as you become storytellers yourself. The other thing is to utilize social media to find a reporter, or Instagram, or even Twitter. A lot of the reporters that, they're hovered down in their corners at home too, but they're very reachable on Twitter, and you can ping them, said, hey, I'd like to talk to you about what my business, my nonprofit is doing, or something like that. So those are ways that you can truly reach reporters. And then go broad. There are two things I want to say. First, go big, and then go small. But the thing when you go big in your presentation is reach out, the Guardian or the BBC, they've done a lot of, stories about what's going on in DC, and they've actually trickled down into, like, the Washington Post or DC is saying, oh, I got to cover this story. The Guardian, the Financial Times is covering the story. You can go to the DCS, you can go to DC Online. I mean, the other thing is that, as I was reminded by a great friend of mine who happens to be the Metro editor for the Post, is that it's not just what you see in the paper. There's a lot of digital content. There are digital opportunities for you to promote your business as well. So these are some of the stories that really do let reporters are in, they're still interested. There's a lot of interest now still in impact stories. You know, how your business or your nonprofit has been impacted by the pandemic, you know, what you see futurely. The other thing is that if your business can have a direct link, by example, I work with a healthcare insurer who actually decided to fund restaurants to do deliveries to front end people that are on the front lines, and that turned into a news story. But if you have some level of community engagement, be it virtually or be it on site, that too can help promote your business through the news media. Recovery stories, of course, I mean, there are a lot of venues for those kind of things. It's not just the Washington Business Journal, although I love the Washington Business Journal. There are some other opportunities where you can talk about how your business is coping or not coping. Then the other thing is that you can cross-brand your business or your business profile with personal stories. Like, what's it like to work from home? What's it like? Do you have a schedule with your kids? And do you have a schedule? Is there something unique that you're doing? Then the other thing that you can do as your own storyteller is take and provide photos or provide content where you can. By example, there's this wonderful thing called thepatch.com. Now, thepatch.com, anybody can go to. All you have to do is register for thepatch.com. You know, for a lot of people, I know that they have, 15, at least between, the Washington, D.C. patch has roughly about, 140,000 online subscribers that get the patch, the Washington, D.C. patch daily. That's not bad. And you're not paying for ads and you're uploading the content yourself. Similarly, there's something called the Chime. And what I have found is that I uploaded content to it. It's from News Channel 8 and WJLA. I uploaded content. I got a call from an assignment desk editor. Hey, we're interested in this kind of story. So you never know where where you uploading your own story. The other thing is to create your own, although it can be laborious if you have people on staff. And I mean a lot, as again, I've mentioned social media, that a lot of people are doing it. And then when you're going through social media to look and see not just where the numbers are. If you see, folks that have maybe on their Instagram account, like something like, 40,000 followers, and okay, you go to their Instagram chat or their Facebook live chat and they only have 40 people online. The thing is that content, if you are an interview, if they interview you, your content will live on their site, and you can use a multiplier about 2.1 to know that, or even in this case, because we're all at home, even higher, and because it'll be repetitive, that your content will be seen or your interview opportunity will be seen. And then I have some, I'm scrolling up now. Okay. And then finally, prepare for your interview, develop some talking points, be Zoom ready, lighting, etc. And the most important thing, because in this age of the internet and we're using it so often, make sure you have backup phone numbers from the interviewer and provide yours. And most importantly, know your audience, know the outlet, but know your audience. And then the other thing that I provided is some resources you can have. Cision is on the high end of things if you haven't made an investment, but there's a lot of free news sites that you can use to upload and send out your press release or notice, or that are actually free of charge. One of my favorites is PR Log. Of course, LinkedIn is something that a lot of people are using to get the word out about their product, their business, their opportunities. And then I also included a link to Public Relations for Dummies, which includes a lot of, just a cheat sheet. Similarly, if you decide you want to go the route of going to media outlets, let me just say this, just target the ones where, like you read, that that you have knowledge of. Don't try to go big. Don't try to be broad about, when I say, don't try to, contact 100 outlets in the whole DMV. Cherry pick some, get them out. And because a lot of the people that are business owners, reporters, producers, anchors, etc., they like talking directly to the source. I mean, I'm the middleman because I'm persistent, you know, I get through sometimes, but very honestly, if you're a business leader or a community leader in this market, you can get through to reporters, you know, once you get through to them, you know, like I said, use the social media channels to do it. Use the LinkedIn to get through it too. I've done that most recently. So those are my tips. Thank you.
Enid, thank you so much. I was going to ask if you didn't mind if I shared your email address. I know that when I meet somebody who knows their area as well as you do, I immediately think, how can I contact you and potentially hire you so I don't have to worry about it? So if anybody's in that boat, please feel free. I put Enid's email address in the chat since I think we might have somebody else sharing their screen in just a minute. But Enid, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I know that I've been working on a couple things recently, trying to crack the code of getting stories picked up, and in less than 10 minutes, you made it much more clear to me for once. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So next up, we have Sarah Gibson with 20 Degrees. Sarah is one of the leading voices in terms of capital access and small business support and everything else in between. Sarah actually helped us shape what the Capital Access Expo would become, and then walked the walk and presented and had a table there and everything else. So Sarah, you're up.
Thanks, y'all. Brian, hi, Rachel. I also want to say, you know, not sorry I'm this is kombucha, but I did want to, you know, I feel like show up with a beverage here of some sort. And Kyle, good to see you. Kyle was my last meeting before we went underground here. So, you know, keeping it real here. Hello, everyone. Eddie, it's good to see you, and Virginia Marie there behind the screen. Enid, your tips were really great. And I think really appreciated targeting and the Zoom ready. I feel like I'm backlit and not doing all of it right, but it's nice to be with you. We work with nonprofits and small social enterprises. Here we are. There I am. And so we do a lot of things. I'm going to be quick here. So pivots, planning, and even the PPP, which is really so fun since I have Eddie here. So we created this nonprofit toolkit, but it's really good for social enterprises too. It's really basic business planning. My business partner, Tom Bartlett, are in the early days of COVID when it was just descending. We were actually with some Main Streets. And it was clear that all of us weren't really sure what was going to happen next. So we thought, how can we get as much information into the hands of as many community members as possible, with the hopes that businesses, nonprofits would have something to look to. Anyone who runs a small business, we can figure it out, but sometimes we need a little more oxygen in the room, and that's what we saw. So our nonprofit toolkit does have things specific to nonprofits, but we know social enterprises often aren't even as sophisticated as some nonprofits that we deal with. So take a look at it. What's here is a survival guide. That's a little bit of a how to think through it, a contingency planning framework, how to think through stress testing, and some how do you plan for scenarios. Response plan is a one-page document. Event planning, that's more for should you have the event or not. A very simple cash flow planning tool, how many days of cash on hand, and we're doing some blogs. The most important questions on the right there that we think everyone should be answering. What's your value now? How much cash do you have on hand? And how can you extend your runway? Doesn't matter what your legal status is, 501c3 or an LLC or whatever the case may be. Understanding your cash position, who, obviously the head of the organization is responsible when we're really pushing people to think not just about 60-90, but really pushing people beyond their comfort zones. And what's your need as a baseline? How many days, again, how many days of cash? And what easy ways, and that's in quotes because not a lot of things are easy, can you extend that runway? We're really pushing people on, hey, there's some things in your budget you might not need, and what are some other things that you can let go of now because you have more choice. Cash flow analysis. Small businesses don't always do some things that, this is a great time, like washing the tops of your thumbs, you know, that we didn't always do that, but now it's a great time to start. just like cash flow planning. So we're really pointing people to this cash flow tool. Beyond that, the scenarios that we're suggesting people look at, because we know not everyone's going to get out of this, but those who can start to mentally look forward, we're giving people 2 scenarios. One, December of this year, and then the second is September of 2021. Really asking people to put on virtual reality glasses. Say, what might the world look like, and how does your enterprise fit? What do you have to do today so that you're still relevant? What decisions can you make in the next 30, 60 days so that you still have options? The other thing, and I really would be interested to see what Eddie would have to say about this as well, is around the PPP. People got it, which is great, but now the hard part's there. Making sure that the record keeping is clean, watching the regs as they come out, watching your payroll expenses really closely, making it easy for your bank, and talking to your money people, your accountants, your investors, that everyone's just on the same page. And on the chat, how do you think I'm doing on that, Eddie? Good. And then reach out. So 20 degrees, our goal is to unlock new forms of revenue for people on the front lines. We've really thought that people close to community, close to solutions, who really understand problems and new ways to solve them should have as many access points as possible. What we know about COVID is that this is a chance to invent our way out of it, and a chance for new capital to be better than maybe we were in the past. And we know it wasn't always so good. So I think this is the community on this call. Say, let's do better. Let's make our city better. That's the fight we're in. Anyone on this call, or anyone who should be on, who couldn't make it because maybe we're all juggling 25 things, happy to talk. Here's ways to get a hold of us. And thanks for everything that folks on this call are some of my favorite people in the city. So thanks for all you're doing.
I think you answered it 100%. And I think that the scary thing going forward is we have to realize that bank rate's the group that bankers like I use when we need to go check rates and things like that. But last year they analyzed inflation adjusted data from the Federal Reserve about liquid savings. The average American had $8,800. And so I think people need, going forward, it's almost a lesson that I think my grandparents taught me after they lived through the World War, that you're going to have to stash a little bit more money away for that rainy day. Because this isn't a rainy day, this is a rainy months, maybe years. And businesses are gonna have to start looking like Microsoft and, you know, Warren Buffett's companies, and figuring out ways to have a bigger, you know, whether it could be from lines of credit and things like that, but there needs to be a strategy for liquidity.
Well, and how can we collectively start to look differently at income shares, at cooperatives, and the old structures didn't get it done. So we have a moment of such significant disruption. How can we collectively make sure that we are creating new streams and new possibilities, so we don't lose 40% of restaurants, 100% or 90 or 80% of underestimated founders? We need that. So I hear your point, right? So how can we invent this? And I think that's where the district is primed.
As I was pouring my lunch cocktail today, because nobody sees what I drink at home, I thought to myself, what if Amazon could figure out a way to be the vehicle for local small businesses to help get orders to them and also help distribute? So we didn't have to disrupt the local businesses, but they could actually be a strategic partner.
Right. Yeah. And how do we use REITs maybe to back up people who can't get an idle because they don't have enough traditional capital?
Exactly.
So anyways, so those are the questions we like to dance around in on Zoom or any other form of communication. Carrier pigeons, I like those too.
Awesome, Sarah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Again, I feel like we're kind of just flying through some great insights here. But I think that by design, we're getting a bunch of different perspectives, which was our hope. So thank you so much for joining us. Up next is Kyle Todd from the Rhode Island Avenue Main Street. Go ahead, Kyle.
Hey, well, I don't have a fancy PowerPoint like all you smart people before me, so I apologize for that. I represent 2 of the now 24 Main Street programs in the District of Columbia, both located in Northeast DC. and proud to have worked with several of you in a variety of capacities. So it's good to see familiar faces. Those of you who are familiar with Main Streets know that our primary function is to support small businesses in our corridors through promotional activities, through continuing education for the business owners, through grants for things like storefront improvement or upgrading their technical infrastructure, or whatever we can do to help short of the PPP. And this time has been no different. How we go about delivering that assistance is changing by the minute. We started a series of conversations that we started off actually with Sarah when COVID was first rumbling around the edges, and how that was going to affect small businesses. And as Sarah pointed out, she was our last in-person interview. And then I've had a series of visits with other Main Street directors, with Director Whitfield from Department of Small Local Business Development, and a host of other business owners on what interesting things they are doing to keep their businesses afloat. And it has been fascinating and gratifying to see all the promise of small businesses being borne out, even in these difficult times. And by that, I mean businesses that are serving the community. They may have started off as a restaurant, but when nobody could find toilet paper or hand sanitizer, they used their industry connections and opened markets within their restaurant to be able to turn around and sell paper products, sanitizing products to their customers, right along with a burger and fries. And alongside doing that, they're also giving back to their community. Several restaurants that I visited with are donating parts of their proceeds either to their own employees, extended families, or to homeless advocacy groups, just basically giving back to the community at a time when it would be very easy for a business owner to say, oh my God, I've got to hoard every penny that I've got. These folks are being true members of a community and giving back. Are also seeing a lot of businesses partnering with other businesses in ways that make sense. Kathleen Donahue from Labyrinth Games over on Eastern Market is partnered with Mr. Henry's and is donating games to the shelters that house families so that kids have something to play with. But she's partnered with Mr. Henry so that you can order your games online through her website and pick them up at Mr. Henry's. So not only are you picking up a game and keeping her in business, but it's encouraging you to buy a meal from Mr. Henry's at the same time, because why not, right? And so some of the unique challenges that Main Street directors are seeing that are also gratifying challenges is we have been banging our heads on our collective desks, trying to get all of our businesses to have an online presence. And we've got lots of wonderful legacy businesses that have been doing business the exact same way for the last 30 years. They don't see any reason to do anything new and exciting until all of a sudden, oh my God, I wish I had a website so I could sell my widgets online now. So we are working with businesses to stand up a lot of websites, a lot of social media pages. We are continually operating on updating an open for business map via Google Maps. Every business in our corridors, we can stay in contact with and update their little bullet point on the Google map. To show you what their hours are, what their website is, how to order food for them. And there's just a lot of options that we have to offer businesses. But most importantly, we're trying to tell those businesses stories. And we're trying to encourage those businesses to tell their own stories. And for those businesses that cannot stay open or cannot sell online, a service business, for instance. We're encouraging those businesses to do what I believe Gary Vaynerchuk calls the thank you economy, and spend some time on social media giving back to your customers in the form of an educational video. Here's how to fill your own nails from a manicurist. We've got several fitness places that are doing online fitness classes at no charge. So there's a good opportunity for all businesses, whether they can be selling things or not, to be really embracing their brand and building their brand loyalty, so that when they do open, they're ready to go. They're top of mind for their customers, and we're trying to help get those stories out as well. Bottom line for me, again, without any slides, and sorry, I didn't know I was supposed to make slides, is there's no such thing as a bad opportunity, even in this really hard time. There are businesses that are embracing it and doing better than they ever imagined that they would in a situation like this, and we're proud to help make that happen. And thank you all for being part of the community that can help make those things happen for small businesses as well.
Thank you, Kyle. I really appreciate it. I did throw a link into the chat, something that was shared with me. I guess eBay has committed $100 million for businesses that don't have any online e-commerce presence. And so that's something we've been sharing. I haven't really dug into it too much, but $100 million caught my attention. And then we also had, Eddie had a question about, he says that we've been working with City Council and DC Place Act for the COVID-19 storm, how to return to that to help Main Street and legacy businesses survive post-COVID-19. Do you have any thoughts on that as you wrap up?
Man, I wish I had the answer to that, but what I can say is I think that now is probably one of the best times to do that, period, because there's not going to be a business in the district that isn't hurting when it comes to taxes, to rent or mortgage. There may be some options for rent or mortgage forbearance, but that doesn't mean it's forgiven. And one of the big challenges for small business owners, particularly those that are leasing, are those triple net leases, and the property taxes aren't going down. So if we can do anything to help those businesses not be the dumping ground for high property taxes, then maybe that can help keep some of those legacy businesses in place. And I also think that if there's a silver lining to this whole thing, it's that a lot of those legacy businesses historically have been getting a lot of publicity about, we're being left behind here. There's not enough options for us to grow. But the reality is they're not embracing enough options themselves. And so if there is a silver lining to this, it's that there are small businesses realizing now, I guess we really do need a website to be relevant. Or, I guess we really do need an updated point of sale system to get the most out of our inventory control. So I think that if we can maximize those feelings of aha on the part of business owners as well as city leaders, then maybe we can come at it from both angles and make a difference from the standpoint of equity for small business owners.
Awesome, Kyle. Thanks so much. And amazingly, we are right back on time for John Mays. So, John, go ahead.
All right. Thank you all. I also don't have a presentation. I ramble enough that I think you'll be able to follow along or come up with questions without it. And I actually kind of knew that I'd be going last, so a lot of what I would talk about has been covered by other people. There's been a lot of great comments, suggestions, kind of guidance already. So what I wanted to focus on to wrap this up is more of the nuts and bolts stuff of what I'm seeing and what I think that you as a small business owner or as someone who works with small businesses can really think about and take forward. If you don't know, SB Works is a small business and economic development nonprofit. We're based out of Ward 5 in Washington, D.C. We've recently expanded to Maryland. And kind of sadly, ironically, we've spent the last year adding on a whole service of avenue for SB Works, focusing on resiliency and community and business survival going through disruptions. That being said, we always anticipated that the resiliency aspects that we'd focus on were more climate change or environmental or just the structure of the marketplace. We did not have a large part of our handbook dedicated to pandemics and shutdowns. So even though we've been working on resiliency, a lot of this is new territory for everyone else as well as us. So I've kind of got two different things I'm going to talk about. One is the more generalized ideas of the small business community and economy going forward, especially in DC, but it's relevant to the whole area. And then the second half would be specific things that I think small businesses that you own or work with really need to consider as they move forward. And I'll go ahead and say that there's two kind of overarching concepts here. Is that one, at SB Works at least, we realize that running a small business or working with small businesses is as much a mental or psychological process as it is a financial or economic one. If everyone was super rational, by the books, and did everything with an economic mindset, then you'd have very little business failure, right? Everyone could have a slow, steady growth according to charts and data, and that would be easy, but that's not really the case. Most people are driven by something other than profit, honestly, or they're driven by a way that they think is the best way to get a profit. So you have to keep in mind that, especially with a small business where you tie so much of your identity and personal worth to it, there's a lot of factors to factor in right now. I think one big struggle for small businesses now is not only are you not making money, you're failing as a business essentially, but that translates into a lot of people thinking that they're failing as a person. They're letting their customers down. They're letting the employees down. They're not providing the role that they always saw themselves in. And so just the idea that you have to change that mindset and say, look, this is something out of your control. This is something where now's the time that you plan ahead. That this is, as unfortunate as it is, this is an opportunity for you to kind of reshape your mindset. Whatever you learned, whatever you thought you learned or knew, you've got to kind of rethink it. And don't let a business struggles weigh you down as a person. And that even goes so far as that if a business fails and dissolves, that's a tough thing. And everyone I talk to is super hesitant to do that, but sometimes that's the right decision, and it doesn't reflect on their ability or their capabilities even. It just reflects the circumstances that are out of their control. And the second big overarching mindset we have working with our clients now is that we've gone from a profit or a, what makes you happy mode to just a survival mode. And I think that a lot of businesses are slow to embrace that, because it's hard to say, look, I'm a caterer. I'm used to doing weddings at this level. I charge $25 a person minimum at a wedding. I can't charge $12 for a meal. That barely covers my food costs. I like providing high quality food. Well, if you make an absolute no profit over the next 2 months, you're going to be better off than most people who have lost money. So the idea that people really need to embrace a kind of concept change of what their business needs to be for the future is something that is what we're really focusing on. I think, and this is not saying this to be negative, but we are super blunt with a lot of people. And the last thing that they need to think is, when things reopen, when the mayor's emergency order lifts, it's not going to be a light switch that reopens business back to how it was. It's going to be a recession economy. Or even worse, because if you're something like a caterer, events are canceled. If you are dependent on festivals, those are canceled. If you're a restaurant, your capacity is probably down to at least half of what it was before. So now's the time to do a lot of planning, a lot of getting ready for the future, everything from revisiting business plans and creating a good, bad, really bad model to, you know, finding out what alternate venues or avenues you can do to work in. I think that some of the specific things for a small business community that I would encourage everyone to do is, this was mentioned before, but definitely want to reiterate the Reopen DC survey. Everyone should fill that out and be detailed in their answer. If you read the committee members of Reopen DC, they're suspiciously absent of small business representation, of a real small business. There's developers and things like that, but people who work on the ground, like almost everyone on this call, with a business financials every day or with a business consulting every day, aren't there. And so it's going to be dependent on us filling out surveys like that to get our voices heard. When you're communicating with clients, or if you're a small business and you're communicating with your customers, be genuine. Be genuine about what your future looks like. Be genuine about what you can do, and be genuine about your message. I think one of the worst things that took me a while to realize is that when I got Uber, Marriott, American Airlines, and Netflix all told me that they're concerned about my health and well-being in this unprecedented time, I just started deleting every email that started with, in this unprecedented time, we're concerned about your health and well-being. So be genuine, get right to the point and say, as your local restaurant, as your consultant for this, as your hair salon, this is tough on us, right? Be genuine and get that out there. And look at ways that you can use your size and your positioning to your advantage. And that kind of segues into the second specific part that I would say is that when you work with small business, or if you are a small business, you have to have 3 hard questions right now. And those 3 hard questions would be to take a hard look at your position, a hard look at your numbers, and a hard look at how you operate. And to describe those, your position, that's your size, your popularity, your structure. Were you kind of overstaffed in terms of, could you function as a business with smaller staff? Nobody wants to lay anyone off or cut hours, but if it's that or close up shop, that's a decision you have to make. And there's no right or wrong answer on that. Some places may say, if I can't provide 10 good paying W-2 jobs, I'm not going to do it. And that's fine. We'll help you with that. But look at really, when you're a small business, when you're a micro business especially, know that a lot of these programs aren't necessarily tailored with you in mind. The PPP, and these numbers may be a little outdated since a lot of people returned their money, but 30% of the PPP funds went to 2% of the applicants, which resulted in an average loan of about $3.5 million. I don't think anyone on this call has a 2-month payroll of $3.5 million. If you do, I'd like to work for you. But that's a little bit bigger than most people we deal with, right? So just realize that, take advantage of what you can, but don't peg your hopes on something too much that's not intended for you. Realize what are your speed. The DC emergency grant, that was a little bit more for the micro business. Some of the other things are a little bit more for the payroll heavy businesses. The EIDL loans, I saw one survey that said 80% of people who did those just for the $10,000 advance grant, and that really only about 20% of people ever wanted the loan that came along with it. So again, those numbers may have changed, but that's something that you have to keep in mind as you work. Also, when you look at your position, think about your contacts. Who can you rely on in the community? Kyle Todd talked a lot about this. Enid talked a lot about how to market yourself. Do not be shy about self-promotion of yourself, of your clients, of your partners right now. Tell everyone how awesome you are. Tell everyone how sad they'll be if you're not providing the services or the goods that you were providing, and just keep going on that. Take a hard look on the numbers. None of us are big enough to get bailed out if we don't have 2 months of savings, but there's going to be another shutdown probably. There's going to be more restrictions in the future. So we have to take a hard look at the numbers and see what can I really put away as a business? What can my business clients really put away? And what kind of reductions of profits or even dissolutions can we do? And then the last one is to take a hard look at how you operate. Even if you don't think you're digital, you're probably going to have to look at going digital. You can be a nail salon, a barbershop. We've helped them go online for their payment and their scheduling. Obviously not a service you can provide digitally to cut somebody's hair, but you can make it so that they walk in at a time, they get their hair cut, they walk out, and it's easier on them. Make sure people can find you, make sure people have data with you, make sure they know what products you're offering, if you need help with the e-commerce store, all that. And then last part to wrap up, SB Works, the Main Street organizations, the Ciocco Center, WDCEP, we're all here for small businesses. And if you work with small businesses, for you and your clients. So keep coming up to us to get these resources. I know in the next month, SB Works is unveiling an e-commerce guide, online classes, and one-on-one technical assistance with people who will set up your e-commerce store. We have digital marketing guides, digital marketing consultants and classes. We have a resiliency guide that focuses on overcoming disruption financially, HR-wise, marketing strategy, and even things like restructuring a business plan. So utilize your community, utilize your contacts, and plan now for a lot in the future, because this is not something that's going to get back to normal anytime soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John. As predicted, everyone who spent their time with us tonight and gave us some of their perspective, I think gave us a lot to think about. And even in some of the common themes, we're past the point now, I think, as a city and as a community, as a nation, where we're just, back on our heels saying, oh my goodness, what is going on around me? I think that there is significant opportunity here for improvement. And, we talked internally in the Ciocco Center that if you had imagined 6 months ago that we could have every single one of the businesses we work with stop and think about their business and returning to basics for 8 weeks, and going back to the business model canvas and all these and Porter's 5 forces and positioning and strategy and all these other things and making sure they're as lean as possible, we wouldn't have imagined it. I think that nobody asked for this, but the encouragement that we're constantly giving to business owners is, look, it's not just you and your business. Take some of the emotion out of it. It's absolutely every single business and every single industry in every single country in the world. But if your industry existed beforehand, and it likely will afterwards, you are now in a race against your competition to reform and reestablish your value in the marketplace. So if that means it's an e-commerce play, fine. If that means that it is, in the example that John just gave, a somewhat minor tweak in terms of scheduling for folks who are providing beauty care services, fine. Just it has become a completely wide open competition in every single market, with the exception of who did get some additional funding in whichever flavor you got, and how much and what the restrictions are versus your competition. I think that's the one kind of variable that gets thrown in there. But I think that the thesis holds that if you are able to come out of this somehow by repositioning and yes, the word pivot is being overused, and so is new normal and all those other things, but that's because it's true. That we're not going to necessarily be able to run our business with the same assumptions we had 6 months ago. That I think everyone agrees with. We're not even able to operate under the same assumptions we had when we first started doing these Monday night calls, because a lot of it has gotten harder, yes, but more clear on the other hand too. So for those who are business owners, anybody who's in touch, I'm issuing homework. Sorry, it's a bad habit. If you're not using the business model canvas, it is where we start our class each semester, which is a single sheet of paper which tells you what your value is in the marketplace. For somebody who, like myself, who had absolutely no way to evaluate one business versus another, this is a tool that makes it abundantly clear from the very beginning. And what's even more valuable is to look at business model canvases of your own business as compared over time. So if you had one from, say, February, and then you had one in April, and you have one now in May, it would be really interesting to see how the channels with which you reach your customers may have changed, or the value that you're attempting to provide them has changed, or even the customers themselves may have changed in terms of what kind of business you have. You know, again, it makes you put on paper what all of your assumptions are. And then the question is, and it's a tough one, do I still have a business? And I think that's where I think John mentioned it. I think that Kyle mentioned it, and I think Sarah did too. You know, these are the types of conversations that we are having with a lot of our businesses, and it's not because we're cold-hearted or unempathetic of where they are. It's simply, does your business still hold water given the new ground rules or given your new assumptions? And I think that's where I think a lot of the reopen questions should be. You know, I don't know whether if you are a volume-driven business that serves $2 beers, whether that's going to be the best business when this whole thing reemerges. That simply the hand-to-hand contact and the volume becomes a problem there. Now, if you have a different product that is perhaps less personal touch intensive, maybe. And for those that have been on these calls, I've used this analogy in the past, but I think that if you view the crowded NFL or SEC football game as the day that this is all behind us, in a way, 80,000 people sitting shoulder to shoulder, and then total shutdown being on the other end of the spectrum, I think the most important question that each business is having to answer for themselves is, where on that spectrum is my business? How much personal contact is necessary if I'm not, you know, a beer vendor at a Redskins game, but I am somebody who relies on personal contact in some way. I'm not simply an e-commerce business. Where am I on that spectrum? And then keeping a very close eye on the discussions for Reopen DC and other areas for these, what are going to be, seemingly everyone agrees, will be some kind of graduated reopening. Where are you on that scale? So that you can start planning for the future. But I really can't thank you all enough. I know that we went a little bit longer than we typically do. I try to stay within an hour, but my goodness, how much ground we were able to cover. Thank you so much, Eddie, for your perspective as always. And Chad and Preyas, thank you so much. Enid, Sarah, Kyle, and John. You know, when we are able to have a in-person happy hour, I'm looking at the screen here with everybody's faces. I can't think of a better group that I would rather have an in-person happy hour with than the folks that are here. And Kate, I know you joined us midway. You'll appreciate this more than anybody. I have a habit of getting somewhat stage fright before these things. And I'm like, who's even going to show up to this thing? Is it going to work? Kate is the one who convinced me not to pull the plug on the Capital Access Expo. And I think Rachel this time is the one who convinced me not to pull the plug on the open mic format. But I think that, you know, I really appreciate the time. Having everybody here sharing their perspective, I really firmly believe is going to be the folks who are going to lay the foundation for the recovery locally. It's not that I don't care what happens on a national scale, but I kind of don't. I hope that the people who are on the call and the people that we all talk to are still around 3 months, 6 months, 6 years from now, and that we are able to reform and thrive in a way that makes this whole crisis a footnote in history for those who were able to at least maintain healthy as a family. And I think that when I get together with great minds like we have on the call, I really appreciate it. And it makes me feel good to wake up again tomorrow and think some more about how we might add value. So thank you so much. And Rachel, went ahead and put a link in the chat for a one-on-one consultation. Once again, if you're not on our newsletter, please join that as well, and we will keep you all very much in the mix. Thank you so much for joining us today, everyone. Keep your head up, keep your chin up, stay healthy with you and your family, and God bless. Hope to see you in person very soon. Cheers.
Amen. Great to see everybody.
Thanks.